Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining the Great Dynamics podcast. My name is Ahmed Hassan, and today we have a reoccurring guest, a friend, team member. Can I say that, Marcel?
I suppose.
And analyst extraordinaire, Marcel Plichta. Marcel was in a couple of previous podcasts and did the brilliant Call of Duty ones. He's a former DIA analyst. Right now, he's doing his PhD at St. Andrews, talking about security issues in Sub-Sahel Africa. He's interested in one-way attack drones and everything drone warfare these days. Thank you for coming, Marcel.
Yeah, pleasure to be here.
So I think for first I want to go into, I think we've talked about this in every podcast that we've done so far.
And a few I haven't.
What's going on with wacky Wagner?
Yeah. I'll try not to retread the same ground. I think the most interesting thing that's happened recently is the other day there was a parliamentary hearing where the UK's Foreign Affairs Committee of Parliamentarians sort of sat down with the with one of the junior ministers for FCDO, which is the UK's foreign ministry or Department of State, and basically grilled him and a couple of I guess guys under him that he could pin the blame on about Wagner, and it was a really interesting hearing as far as hearings go. It was still 2 hours of mostly nothing, but there was an interesting distinction there between the committee and between policymakers, and this is mirrored in the US and other countries, where the committee and the policymakers were very interested in intensifying efforts to go after Wagner, to stop Wagner. And you had the ministry officials themselves who were less interested in going after Wagner itself and sort of conceived of their anti-Russia efforts and their efforts to help Ukraine fight Russia as something that will harm Wagner by extension. And that sort of Wagner is not necessarily as big a deal as the committee makes that. That was sort of the implication, because they were emphasizing stuff like we have we don't necessarily have a dedicated Wagner team. We have people that come together from different departments, and we mostly see Wagner as a regional issue. So there was a really interesting philosophical difference there between sort of hard charging politicians and then sort of more cautious civil servants, and that's something that I think is also playing out in the US as well, where you have increasing focus on Wagner as an organization and increasing resources going to them, like how they were recently designated a transnational criminal organization.
Do you think that they're going to be designated a terrorist organization?
That's an interesting question. I think in theory, they fit the criteria. I think it comes down to, and Congress can order the president to do it, and there was some legislation trying to do that. I don't think it's gone through. But there, I think probably administration officials are questioning whether or not, even if they meet the criteria, are they really a terrorist organization? You know what I mean? Is this the purpose of this legislation? And this is a similar discussion that was had when they were talking about designating the IRGC, which ultimately was designated a terrorist organization, but there was sort of back and forth and discussion over, what is the purpose of this designation? I think ultimately what it'll come down to is if the US thinks, and I mean, this also applies to the UK and Europe as well. They have their own sort of designation systems. I'm just more up to date on what the US one is. For the US, it'll come down to political will, right? They'll the administration, if they think Wagner's a big enough problem, they will just throw every single tool, they can at it, regardless of whether or not the label precisely fits.
Which think that the reasoning behind it is, more tools to go after, with few sanctions to go after individuals that either work with Wagner or employ them, so making that much more difficult.
Yeah, and I mean, there have been some sanctions on Wagner and Prigozhin for a couple of years. The TCO, the Transnational Criminal Organization designation, and potentially a foreign terrorist organization designation, both intensify that. And at least in the case of an FTO designation, like the Transnational Criminal Organization is derived from sort of an executive order. We're getting into the weeds on US civics here, but essentially, that's the criminal organization is from an executive order. So there's limitations as to what sort of the president without Congress can do, because a foreign terrorist organization designation is more of an executive and legislative thing. There's a lot steeper penalties associated with not even just being a member of Wagner necessarily, but facilitating them, working with them, helping them. And that has, steeper penalties. There's a higher risk that your assets will be frozen. And I think the most notable one is it affects your ability to enter the U.S. is a big one. You can't necessarily do that for not that a criminal organization like a Yakuza member or something would necessarily be let into the U.S., but it's much more likely that if you're associated with an FTO that you'd be denied entry into the States and things like that. But there's going to be a limitation to sanctions no matter what, though. This is sort of just an intensification of that effort.
Obviously, now you're seeing more efforts to paint Wagner as this powerful force in Africa, which I think is vastly overstated. Particularly, I think the presence of Wagner in Burkina Faso, there are some people that say it's overblown. There's some people that say, they're taking over the country. I know you've written about this not that long ago, about CAR and Wagner. What is your opinion on the Sahel, Wagner's involvement there, and what is the threat really?
It's sort of, and this is one of those things where you and I are both interested in Wagner because we're interested in mercenaries and sort of these things. So we have a personal interest in groups like Wagner and those sorts of things. But when you actually look at the region of the Sahel, Wagner is as much a symptom, of instability, much more than necessarily a cause of it.
Yeah, absolutely.
I brought this up in other podcasts, but in each of the cases where Wagner's popped up, and that this isn't just the Sahel, but this is also at least the case in Mali. There was African Union missions, there were UN missions, there were European Union training missions. There was Task Force Takuba, right, and all these things. So it's not as if these countries at the first sign of trouble were calling Putin necessarily. With Burkina, I think there's a lot of unknowns, right? Because I wrote an article basically expressing skepticism at the idea that Burkina Faso was going to be where Wagner goes in the short term, while the war in Ukraine was happening and taking a lot of Wagner resources. At the time I wrote that, there was a different president of Burkina Faso because it had undergone a coup and has since undergone a second coup. And I don't have quite as good a read on the new guy. I think he's made statements sort of expressly saying that Wagner isn't coming, but then there was reports that Russians were coming to look at mining stuff, which is usually it doesn't indicate that Wagner's coming, but it is sort of one of the signs you would look for in that instance. So it's less clear with Burkina, but it seems like Wagner's taking casualties in CAR and they're taking casualties in Mali, and that's going to sort of drain the manpower they have to send to Burkina. And if you're the Burkinabe government, right, it would be hard to look at Wagner activity in CAR or Mali and come away with the impression that they're particularly successful at counterterrorism. So there's a lot of unknowns, but they might judge for regime security, for training the military. It's in the long term it'll be worth it, but we just don't have. I just think we don't have enough evidence yet.
So I think particularly on the regime security, it seems that Wagner, that's like their bread and butter.
Oh yeah,
right.
It's the easiest part.
Keeping whoever and undermining security and facilitation. So maybe good to segue into something that we're working on right now. We're gonna actually email everybody this week about it. Our coming focus on Sahel Security Week, where we're gonna look at the Sahel forecast, different countries, different actors, different problems. And like we did on Arctic Week, so that would be the last week of February. Arctic Week was the last week of December. We've decided after the success of Arctic Week it's a little bit of self-promotion, guys, so bear with. But we as Great Dynamics, we decided to do 6 thematic weeks. We're not going to talk about all 6 of them, just the one in front of us, which is the Sahel Security Week. We might not even call it Sahel Security Week, we might just keep it to Sahel Week and broaden our scope a little bit more, where we will talk about Wagner, where we'll talk about the issues of terrorism, illicit trade, governance, the dynamics between herder and farmer or hunter communities, and communal violence. We've been writing about the Sahel for a long time, and we have a lot of experience on the ground too. So we thought it is as good as any time to talk about it. And I know like Ukraine is on the forefront of everybody, and I've gotten questions why we are not talking more about Ukraine and why we're not focusing our attention on it. And I think there's a lot of brilliant people that are doing it and that are doing a great job covering it. Same for the Middle East. We just pride ourselves that we do a lot of good work in sub-Saharan Africa, around it, and Africa at large, and some on Latin America. So those, get a little bit more attention, a little bit more focus as it deserves. And so, yeah, that's something that I wanted to mention. I know you had some ideas on what we should cover. Yeah, could you go into that?
I think the opportunity of having like a dedicated week for Sahel stuff is that much like the world in general, when it comes to the Sahel, people will sort of jump to whatever the most pressing, sub issue is. And they'll leave out the bigger picture. Like for a long time, it was, the Mali coup until it became Burkina Faso.
Yeah.
And I think the benefit of talking about, a lot of the countries in the Sahel that are sort of given short shrift in traditional media and talking about some of those longer term dynamics is, it gives you a fuller picture. The Sahel isn't just Wagner in Mali and potentially in Burkina Faso, right? What's Niger doing, right? What's Mauritania doing? How are issues like desertification and the shrinking of Lake Chad, affecting regional security?
Yeah.
And those are equally important topics, and depending on how fundamental we want to get with stuff like environmental change and farmer herder conflicts, more important for understanding where the region's headed in the medium and long term.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the causes of instability and ensuing insurgencies and terrorism can be attributed to climate and environmental issues, the lack of water or competition of water, or if you want to even make it cooler, water wars. Cue the fireworks behind me, or in this case, fountains. That will be more adapted.
And at least for farmer herder conflicts, it's not like this is necessarily a new dynamic, but these environmental stuff just kicks it all into overdrive, right? Where herders have to move their animals south, and then and then they land in someone's farm, right? And there's on a macro level that doesn't seem like much, but if it's happening all over the place, and then you have the layer of community and ethnicity, and then on top of that, international criminal organizations and terrorists and stuff, it gets real messy.
It does. It really does. I mean, you see it in Nigeria, a little bit further afield. You see it in the whole of Africa. Those dynamics, it's been a problem for a long time. But yeah, we thought that with the changes happening, the effect that the Sahel has on Europe, the effect it has on other relations, for example, in the Middle East, US-China competition, and now obviously Russia, we thought it would be, as good as time as any to delve deeper into this. And as you mentioned, some of the countries, they don't get any attention. I mean, you left out Chad, for example.
Yeah, I did.
Even Sudan, because Sudan is considered geographically, I think Sudan is part of the Sahel, just isn't mentioned with those countries, the G5 Sahel one.
Yeah.
So I think that will get more focus from us, but I think Sudan is a whole can of worms on its own.
Yeah, it's several cans of worms within a bigger can, I would say.
Yeah. So we're not gonna veer too much off of it. And on Chad, there was like an interesting development was like the growing role of Israel in Sahelian countries, Saharan security, or West African security.
I know there was also a delegation to Sudan, I believe, as well recently by one of the
Yeah, they're gearing up to sign a peace treaty between Israel and Sudan, and I think Chad is has normalized relations with Israel. There was a bit of an issue where they were basically pressured, I think, by Algeria to not do that. Yeah, it's interesting, a lot of interesting dynamics and big power competition going on. And for us as analysts, it's a dream to delve deeper into these things and see if we can offer like a peek. And I think that's as best as we can do. One thing that I wanted to reiterate, the last week of this month, February. So if you're hearing this in March or in April, I'm sorry, it's the last week of February. That's when we're going to do the Sahel week. And more information will follow. So stay tuned to our social media and our newsletter. Something that I wanted to ask you, and we can keep it short and sweet. I'm guessing that you don't want to go too deep into it. You was an analyst at the Pentagon, and so you have a little bit of an idea what's going on there. The Chinese spy balloon.
People keep asking me about the spy balloon, and it's and it's tricky. It's tricky because I have no real opinion on it. I will preface this by saying I'm definitely not a PRC person and definitely not a balloon person, outside of the context of birthdays and celebrations.
You don't say.
But I mean, yeah, I think the balloon incident in general has been sort of interesting to watch play out on social media, right? Because you have not necessarily OSINT people, but people who are interested in doing commentaries on NatSec issues, sort of decrying this as either a fatal breach of U.S. air defense and airspace or like a non-issue. I think honestly the most interesting part of it, outside of the whole drama of watching it get shot down and all that, was the revelation that this is like the third or fourth one. And that previous ones might have been either undetected or not detected until later on. I mean, I don't really see it as like some people see it as like a catalyst for something, but it's not really something you would traditionally call aggression, right? There's sort of an expectation that great powers would be spying on each other in one way or another, and a balloon is just a different way to do that.
Yeah, for sure.
I'm not saying that China or the U.S. should be floating balloons over each other, but that's sort of going to happen. They're going to be either by satellites, or I think the Chinese were pulling some U.S. USVs, some American USVs out of their waters as well a while back.
Oh yeah, true.
Yeah. So this is something that is like, I guess it's public recognition that there's a whole level of espionage that they're sort of missing out on. So yeah, I mean, that's really my thoughts on the balloon. I mean, it was fun watching it get blown up with a like $400,000 missile. That was pretty funny.
Everything that blows up is always interesting for people to analyze. But yeah, the theories, the maybe conspiracy theories, I don't know how you want to call them, unfolding on Twitter were interesting to follow, how everybody all of a sudden became an expert on ISR platforms and potential EMP capabilities. And we are actually doing an article or report on EMP, Chinese EMP capabilities.
Oh, nice.
It's got to be written. And Michael, who is our head of research and editor, who's writing it, he was in the middle of writing it when the Chinese spy balloon came up, and he was like, well, now everybody will think that I just did it because of this. He's like, why didn't I finish it a week before? And it would be ideal.
Oh man.
So I promised everybody that it wasn't, the timing was just bad. Yeah, so that's interesting. To go into spying on a different way. There was an interesting announcement on I think in the UK on cyber intrusions by Russian and Iranian advanced persistent threats. And I mean, you encountered it, I think.
Yeah.
You were one of its targets.
Well, so on Twitter this morning, and I didn't realize that the UK actually, GCHQ put out a press release about spearfishing attacks and APR and information gathering from Iran and Russia linked. I don't think they've out and said that it was state organized, but it's probably one of those things where it's a cutout or somehow related. Apparently they released a warning like around the 26th of January, released a media thing about it. And I didn't notice that until today. this morning when I saw that a UK MP basically did a long thread about how he had been the victim of spearfishing and how he was apprehensive that information about his emails was about to come out and how it was probably going to be modified, and like normal politician stuff you say when your emails get compromised. But it was interesting for me because obviously this particular MP was on the Foreign Affairs Committee, so I assume that and is a member of the Scottish National Party. So presumably he might not necessarily have been, he could have been the target, but it might have been an effort to sort of get his address book, right? That's how a lot of this happens, right? Is you get in somewhere, you get their address book, and then you spread from there like a virus.
Yeah.
And I did encounter this because in the article they mentioned that sort of NGOs, academia, and stuff were also being targeted, and several months ago there was one going around UK universities. And I actually received one. I don't think I got hacked. If I did, they didn't find anything interesting. They found a lot of research about small states in the 1800s. They found a lot of research about Hessians. But it is the thing that's happening. And I suppose that I can't really speak to Iran, but at least for Russia and Russia-linked actors, right? A lot of academia, a lot of NGOs, and a lot of government officials are looking at Russia, right? And they're looking at Ukraine. So gathering information about who's doing that, what they're talking about, even if it's not, classified information, could still be useful for them.
Yeah, definitely. It could feed into the fabled Russian active measures, covert operation, covert action, or influence operations that they're conducting. And it's also a nice segue for me on that, because we have articles and reports coming out on Russian and Iranian cyber threat actors. So yeah, look out for that. I think either this week or next week. And we have a long deep dive coming out on Russian influence operations in Northern Europe, in the Nordics. And there's been a lot of information coming out on that, a lot of agents that were arrested of the GRU, the SVR. So that's very interesting, and it fits into this time that we live in. I do wanted to mention something that we generally don't taste in the news and what's going on in the world if it's not really the stuff that we normally talk about: military, defense, intelligence, and security affairs. But I just wanted to mention the horrible earthquakes in Turkey and Syria. And we are following it on a personal level, and I think us as analysts and researchers, we know people there who work in those areas, and we wish everybody good health and that they can resolve as many or find as many people as possible, and hopefully they can keep the death toll in check, because it's horrible seeing those videos.
Awful.
I decided not to engage with those videos because it's just we talked last week about vicarious trauma. Man.
Oh yeah.
Seeing those videos is horrible. Particularly for places that have been already battered by wars, for that to happen. So I wanted to mention that.
Yeah, there's sort of a narrative that if you're if you're on social media, if you're an analyst, you have to engage with every single video and every single piece of media. And you mentioned this last podcast, but that's definitely not the case. I think seeing stuff like that, whether it's a natural disaster or the result of some kind of violence, is it doesn't make you tougher to see all that stuff over and over again. I think it makes you softer. And it sort of starts to accumulate and weigh on you after a while. So, yeah,
absolutely. And I think we're looking at doing some sort of raising funds for support for people down there. So look out to the website and social media when we come out with something like that, either through other organizations or which it will more likely happen that we would do something ourselves, because we're not really equipped to do that. But to all our friends, family, supporters, and everybody else in the affected areas. Yeah, we hope you're well, and we wish the best. And yeah, I just wanted to have a moment to reflect, and then sadly we have to go on to the order of the day, which is our job and something we need to do. Yeah, I wanted to also mention something that I've been getting a lot of questions about, Marcel. Like, I think I should give them your email so they can pester you instead of me.
Well, let's not get ahead of ourselves.
I'm joking. I don't mind it out. We can email me, guys. If you have my email, go ahead. I'll, even if it's just to complain. But yeah, we've been working for a long time on a intelligence training capability development project that we're doing as Grey Dynamics, which would be a whole separate thing. And we're getting along where we're almost there. So be patient with us. There's a lot of people involved in it and advising us and involved in it. I'm involved in it. Marcel is involved in it. Some of our other colleagues at Grey Dynamics and elsewhere are involved in it. Industry is involved in it. So yeah, maybe something you want to mention, what you're looking forward to, or what you think is interesting around your intelligence training, or what's missing.
Yeah. I mean, I think that in general, I think the gap that we're looking to fill is the fact that there's not a ton, but there are sort of OSINT training courses, right? And they bill themselves as providing, the ability to use Twitter for intelligence or use ArcGIS or other tools. And those are all great. But fundamentally, I think the main thing we're providing is sort of the critical thinking skills to actually use those tools as good as you possibly can. It's one thing to be able to visualize data or collect data. It's another thing to get it together and present it in a way that's useful for either, if you're a journalist, the general public, if you work for a company, your CEO or your supervisor, and if you work for the government, obviously whoever your customer is there. But for me, I think that's sort of the gap we're aiming to fill is sort of those critical thinking and analytical skills, and then also at the start an understanding of what intelligence is and what it's for, and sort of grappling with some of the questions of the day. We don't necessarily come to a conclusion. You can sort of come to that conclusion yourself, but the introduction of open source and SOCMint has sort of challenged, because a traditional course, right, like 15 years ago, right, would have been all about government and how government does intelligence and stuff like that. And
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And it's quite obvious now that, the private sector, NGOs, journalists and stuff, it's a big tent. And the notion that intelligence is something that only a government does or that only a government should do is not necessarily the case anymore. So those are some things I'm excited about.
Yeah. Also for me too. The other one that I'm really excited about which is something close to my heart, and one of the reasons why I set up Grey Dynamics is the production side. So how do we share our assessments and how do we write? And also on a personal level for me is that I'm really interested in writing, and can we use tools, mental tools as well as like actual tools, to better convey our assessment or our level of, maybe conviction is not the best word to use, but our certainty levels on a certain event or a certain future happening. And that's what I'm really interested in. And we will be touching on other intelligence disciplines. Some we will teach, and some of our friends with more experience in it will teach it. And I'm really looking forward, and it's going to be, we want to continue to open the door to non-governmental people in the private sector, journalists and in academia, and keep that tent as big as possible. And I think right now we are living in a golden age of intelligence. Is a bit of the Wild West. And I think to develop proper skills and make good use of what is possible right now and the demand for intelligence capabilities, and so on an individual level as well as on a corporate or agency level, where you might want to build that capability into your organization and you don't know how, let us know. And we can definitely assist with that. And yeah, having said that, more details, more insights into that will come, guys. But I just wanted to mention that since we are talking about the things that we're working on and you guys have been asking me about it. So I want to have put that out there. Again, newsletter, social media. The two best places I would say is Twitter and our newsletter, which I write myself. So yeah, have a look at that, guys.
But also follow on Instagram as well.
Yeah, follow on Instagram as well. But Meta doesn't really like us. So we've been shadow banned because they don't like that we talk about conflict. I don't know why, but it is what it is, I guess. We are still active on it. You can reach us out. You can reach out to us and everything. They do seem to like our content on aerospace and everything GeoInt, and that channel is really blowing up. So if you're interested in anything that flies, that shoots, that spies, so balloons and wall blades, spy blades, all that kind of stuff, follow our Great Dynamics Aerospace accounts on Twitter as well as Instagram. Yes, a lot of self-promotion, so I feel like we need to stop it from time to time. Otherwise, I just keep on going.
Yeah, I mean, the thing, one of the recent things you guys covered that I thought was interesting was the, I guess it wasn't a shoot down, but when that Congolese plane either was in or close to the Rwandan border.
Yeah,
I thought that was interesting. Also, I mean, it was crazy. It was crazy how many angles there were of that.
It's a weird world that we're living.
Well, I mean, normally in conflict zones, even in Ukraine, you rarely actually see, the munition. You'll see it sometimes just because there's so many videos being taken, but 99% of the time it's, someone started taking the video after whatever munition or artillery happened. And so the fact that there was two separate videos, at least, of like the plane in flight, footage of it landing, like pictures of the damage and stuff like that. It's crazy. I think people in the 80s would have been extraordinarily jealous of how much is just out there.
Yeah, absolutely. I think like some people also underestimate the amount of smartphones in Africa. A lot of countries in Africa, they didn't go from analog to digital to wired to mobile, right? So they just jumped directly into 3G, 4G, and 5G. So some of countries in Africa are better connected than countries in Europe. It's a crazy thing to say, but it's really true. Even Somalia.
It also makes sense, I mean, especially for the banking sector and stuff, where a lot of people were unbanked because there just weren't brick and mortar banks the farther in. And the idea that you have access to your money, via your phone is revolutionary. And it's cool that they got to skip over dial up and all that, all that crap.
Absolutely. There's like a lot of fraud leaked technology. Like in 2010, I went to Mogadishu, Somalia. And at that time, the country was known still as a failed state for more than 25 years. And they had mobile banking. Like they were camel learners using their phones to send money or receive money from family abroad. And that was not even the thing, like Venmo, and they didn't exist even, I think, at that time. So very interesting to see that. I think we can do a whole podcast on that stuff. Some things on around finance and microfinance that I'm really interested on a personal level, since that was my previous career. But we are already all over the place in this app. So
I think there's also a perception in the West that the way money is moved in these countries is like Hawala networks, but not like electronically or anything. Just like, someone passes someone else on the street like $1 and then they pass it on.
Yeah, it's crazy.
And that's definitely not the case even for anywhere really.
Yeah, no, it's interesting that people think that it's Hawala networks around the world, so not just the Somali ones, but any ethnicity that sends money back. I mean, I think there's like huge money that goes from remittances from the UK to like the Caribbean, especially like Jamaica, from Canada to Jamaica, from the US. So that's an interesting trend that has, I think, that's been around for hundreds of years.
Yeah, I think it's treated as something as exotic, right? Like even though functionally a modern Hawala network is not that different from like an EBT, like a bank transfer, because it's foreign and everyone supposedly knows everyone in the network and stuff.
Yeah, it's used even in the, it's even used in the latest Jack Ryan season 3.
Is it?
Yeah. I know that show gets a lot of hate. I think for what it is, it's really. But we can go into like cultural recommendations in a bit. I wanted to ask you right now: are there any tips, tools, advices something you're using right now, something that caught your fancy, as they say, that you could divulge?
Yes, actually. So I'm doing a separate project for the university I'm at related to aid flows, trade, influence in the Horn of Africa. Really high level stuff. I'm not getting into the weeds, but I ran into this site HDX, or I guess like Humanitarian data or humdata.org.
Yeah.
And what it is it's basically a list of different data sets. So it's like hundreds of different data sets that exist for, you can sort it by country, you can sort it by. So, if you're looking at, say, I don't know, like levels of aid to Sudan, but only as it relates to like dealing with drought or something, you can very quickly access like all that information from like official sources, right? Because you don't necessarily have to go to like the African Development Bank site or the UN site or that sort of thing. So that's actually been extremely useful for me right now. And I realize it's sort of high level and academic, but when it comes to understanding trends and especially how like inflection points in international politics affect these trends. Like if you look at one example is like the independence of South Sudan, right, on Sudan's trade relationship with China, where there was a massive trade imbalance because Sudan was one of the major oil exporters to China, and then just overnight it just flips because China's exporting the same amount, but it's no longer importing quite as much petroleum. Is an example, and then
Well, we use it too.
I can probably put the link in. We can probably put the link in the description.
Yeah, please.
But it's a really good, fast, safe, free resource for people looking at that kind of information.
That's a good one. Yeah, really like that. Was there anything else that you wanted to mention?
I have. Well, I guess I'm having an op-ed come out, a co-authored op-ed in Foreign Policy come out on about, believe it or not, the Wagner Group.
All right.
And that just touches on sort of a lot of the issues we were talking about, like the terrorist designation and sort of the implications of that, the receptivity of different actors to going after Wagner, and sort of concludes with sort of the reflection we've sort of had here, where Wagner is only part of a broader problem, and that sort of, if you want Wagner or groups like Wagner to go away, you have to look at sort of what causes it. Why are actors looking for people who provide, Wagner-like or executive outcomes like security services?
Oh, don't say that.
Oh yeah, no, sorry.
Don't lump them together.
There was one person I was talking to who was like a lawyer who was really eager that there be a definition of mercenaries, so that like UK security companies were not lumped in with Wagner. They were like, well, we don't want G4S and Garda World to be lumped in with Wagner. And I thought that was pretty funny that like his interest in going after Wagner was like brand defense for less objectionable PMSCs.
Hey, business is business, and branding is everything, so
yeah,
that plays a role. Now I think from my end, one tool that I've mentioned this in a thread that I wrote on Twitter, if you want to find it, that I really, really enjoy is CryptBat. I think it's free. It works basically like Google Workspaces or Microsoft Teams. And so it has like a text editor, online text editor. It has a replacement for Excel, for calendar. And the good part of it is it's completely end-to-end encrypted, and you can do it anonymously. So you can basically write things online, continue it, invite people into, or collaborate with people online. I have no affiliation with them. I don't think they even know they exist. So there's no discount code or whatever. But I just like using it.
We got to get that affiliate link. We got to join the network.
Yeah. So Crib Bad. That's one that I really like, and there's some other ones that I can mention. But I think that's a really good one. And if you cannot afford Microsoft or you don't want to use Google's free version, which is good to check out Crib Bad. We'll put it in the description. All right, Marcel, last bits, cultural recommendations, any books, TV shows, games.
We talked a bit about offline about Andor, but you haven't seen it, so I can't.
Well, I started looking at it.
Oh, you started?
So yeah, I started. I've watched episode 1 and 2, I think.
Also known as the slowest 2 episodes.
It's a very slow burn.
Yeah, watch episode 3, and then there's a reason they released, I think, the first 3 episodes all at once.
Oh yeah,
and that's because I think they realized that if they only release the 2 slow burn episodes before it gets a little crazy, then maybe people wouldn't be as interested. But
no, I have faith.
I felt the same way. I stopped watching I stopped watching for like a week after the first 2 episodes. I was like, yeah, I'll come back to this later, and then after that, I was sort of riveted. But I'm not gonna say. I don't want to be too. But moving on to a different Disney product. I don't know if we talked too much about the new Black Panther, because I saw that.
No, we have not. I saw it too, yeah. Go ahead. Spoiler alert, guys.
Oh, yeah, it's sort of spoiler alert, you're right, yeah. Well, it sort of touches on a lot of what we do, right? Because it's, there was a big intelligence subplot there, and also sort of, I guess sort of I don't know, I mean, it's made by like...
covert action.
Yeah, action, but it's like made by Americans, right? So there's like a U.S. focus that I don't actually think needed to be in the movie that much.
There is a bit of a French function too.
Oh yeah, there is. Yeah. For some reason, but yeah, no, I liked it. Overall, I think the benefit to watching it on Disney Plus is you can skip like half an hour towards the end. In my opinion, it does that Marvel thing where every single Marvel movie where you don't know the characters already has to have like an action set piece at the end for like it was the same with Shang-Chi. I don't know if you saw that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
but they had a big battle at the end for no reason. When it could have just been sort of character driven. But yeah, no, I like Black Panther as a franchise at the very least because it sort of proves to investors that it's worth making movies that touch on other regions and cultures, even if they don't necessarily get it right or they sort of oversimplify things. Movies like The Woman King have come out. Were probably a direct result of Black Panther making $1 billion.
Yeah, I can recommend that one too. I like it.
Yeah, I didn't actually see The Woman King.
Yeah, that one I can recommend. It's based on like true-ish events, I can say. I've read a lot about the backstory of the movie before the movie came out. Like I didn't know there was a movie coming out, but it was nice that they stuck with reality as much. For people that don't know, and honestly, I was born in an African country, and I always, I enjoy seeing good representation. It's something to enjoy. I didn't really like the first Black Panther. Please don't attack me for that, guys. It was like people made like a cultural momentous thing, yeah. And I understand that part of it. It's just that as a movie, I didn't like it. The second one, I thought was way, way better. Obviously, because there was like more intrigue, more intelligence, more covert action, all that cool stuff, special operations, and all the stuff that I like to write and read about. So that one I really liked. Anything else on your end?
I've been playing Ghost Recon Breakpoint, which is
all right.
Very not good. I don't know if you've played either this one or the one before it, Wildlands.
No, I haven't. No.
But it's sort of like, I mean, it's a Tom Clancy franchise thing, so you kind of know what to expect in terms of like geopolitics and intrigue and sort of the military operators being cool. But this one's like they took crazy pills. I mean, it's like an island. It's like an island in the South Pacific, and like some like Elon Musk tech billionaire like sets up a drone based AI company that basically swallows the whole island, and then for some reason he hires a PMSC to like oversee security on this island where he has a bunch of killer drones, and then the PMSC deposes him and takes over it.
As they do.
this isn't a spoiler, by the way. This all happens before, but it's just really funny to see like writers who have just grabbed like drones, AI, autonomy, and stuff like out of the headlines, and they're like, how do we make this into like a 60-hour video game?
Yeah, interesting. Obviously, I've seen like walkthroughs here and there. I haven't had the chance to play it yet, also because I've been moving house and putting everything together here. So it has taken a lot of my free time.
Sorry, I forgot to mention the cringiest part of it is that it's very gear and like loot based. And all of the loot's branded. So it's like you can get 511 tactical pants and like Oakleys and stuff like and it's not like you know, it's not like fake. It's like literally like 511 trademark tactical, like, you know, pants or sunglasses or boots or whatever.
But you know what though? A lot of people that play those games love that.
Oh yeah, I mean, you know, I guess it's better than if they had like, you know, fake Levi's and fake cargo pants and
exactly.
But it was pretty funny the first time I opened a case and it was like Oakley sunglasses and I'm like, wow, this is realistic.
All right. Yeah. I mean, from my end, I'm pretty boring. I don't really have that many cultural recommendations outside of I'm reading for like more serious stuff. I'm reading a book on Putin called Putin's Men, I think. It's a really interesting book, talks about his history, his rise to power, the people around him, the dynamics that shaped Russia while he came to power. And I'm rereading Kahneman's book, Thinking Slow, or Slow Thinking. I'll put it in the description, guys. I'm rereading that for maybe the third time. A lot of tips and tricks and advices from that book will go into the course too, because I really enjoyed that book. And for fun, I'm reading the Boys comic.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm doing that.
How does it compare to the show, do you feel like?
It's way more brutal.
It is? Because the show's pretty brutal.
Yeah, the show is pretty brutal. The comic is even more brutal, which is crazy.
Oh man. Yeah.
Yeah, that's for me. Any like cultural recommendations, Marcel? Any parting thoughts?
You know, you can subscribe or follow both Great Dynamics and myself on Twitter, most social media platforms. I'm not on Instagram, and you can watch out for, you know, articles I write both for Great Dynamics and for other publications like the Daily Beast.
Yeah. We will share all your stuff in the show notes. And guys, again, as I said last week, I really appreciate all the support, and we're trying to keep this podcast as long sponsor free as we can, because we really enjoy doing it, and we really enjoy bringing you guys insights into this world. If you want to support us, or if you want to engage more into our work or into our community, we are running right now a discount for all the podcast listeners, 20%. If you use the word podcast, all small letters, no caps, then you can get 20% discount on all year subscriptions. So the secret one and the top secret one. So yeah, that's one thing that I really enjoy, because especially in the top secret one, you get access to our community, to our Slack, and then you can ask Marcel questions, you can pester him, and you can ask myself questions.
You can hold me to account.
Yeah, you can hold him to account and tell him that his sources didn't check out. And you can do the same to me and or any of our analysts and contributors. So yeah, if you want to engage more with us and want to work in our process, if you want to pitch ideas or report ideas, subjects, please, you can do that through that. Otherwise, engage with us in the newsletter. I do that every Sunday. Sometimes I do 2 a week, depending on if I'm feeling inspired and I have something to say. But normally there's the recap on Sundays, where we recap all the work that we've been publishing, as well as some of my ideas of what's going on in the world or in our industry. Marcel, thank you so much, man. I really appreciate it. And
yeah, no problem.
thank you if you made it to this far. Thank you, guys. And please give us a rating. If you think we deserve it, give us a 5-star rating on Apple, Spotify. We are now on YouTube too, so show us some love and subscribe there. It will really help to spread our message and it is a labor of love. So thank you guys, and